Well, at least these were more reasonable than last year's animated shorts. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today we're finally going to be jumping into some long-form Oscar-related content. I've got an ongoing short series ranking the nominees in each of the 23 Oscar categories, but I wanted to dig a little deeper and bring you some content that focuses on arguably the most underappreciated categories, the short films. I was lucky enough to be able to see all of the Oscar nominated shorts again this year, so I wanted to talk about them as part of my annual 3-part Rankography series. This way, even people who haven't had a chance to watch them might have an opportunity to get a sense of them at least before the ceremony. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. I'll be talking about the documentary and live-action shorts later this week, but today we're beginning with the animated shorts. Of the 3 shorts categories, this is usually the most widely screened, and is typically a little bit on the lighter side, but that was certainly not the case last year. However, things are a bit closer to normal this time around. The 5 nominees are An Ostrich Told Me the World is Fake, and I Think I Believe It, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, The Flying Sailor, Ice Merchants, and My Year of Dicks. Since this is a rankography, I'm going to be ranking these shorts, but remember, this is just my ranking, not the ranking, so be sure to post your own personal ranking of the 2023 animated short film Oscar nominees in the comments below. Coming in at number 5, The Flying Sailor. This is a Canadian submission and was co-directed by the duo of Amanda Forbes and Wendy Tilby. Using paint-like CG animation, it tells the somewhat abstract story of a sailor who experiences the Halifax explosion of 1917 in a way that no one else did. Of the 5 nominees this year, this is the only one that I would say I didn't like. I didn't hate it or anything, but it was the weakest of the bunch by far. The animation style is fairly interesting, at least at first, reminding me a lot of the style used in one of last year's nominees, Box Ballet. Unfortunately, despite its relatively short length and very unique premise, this film simply isn't all that engaging. It has some good ideas to it, trying to represent the concept of somebody's life flashing before their eyes, but it goes a little too far with that and becomes this abstract, kind of pseudo-pretentious cosmic thing. And even though the true story at the heart of the short film is remarkable, this film doesn't really capitalize on it, instead mostly just providing us with a fairly silly-looking tumbling image. So even though I didn't really like the short, I am happy that it made me aware of the Halifax explosion of 1917, which has led to some interesting reading since. Coming in at number 4, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. This is a UK submission and was directed by the duo of Peter Boynton and Charlie Mackesy, and is available on Apple TV+. This hand-drawn watercolor short focuses on the journey of a lost boy and the 3 animal companions he gains while searching for a home. Okay, so I can already tell that this is going to be the fan favorite, and I anticipate that it'll probably actually take home the Oscar, so I realize that my placement of this film in the 4th spot is probably a bit of a hot take. But I do want to make it clear that I don't dislike this film. I actually thought it was very good, but just not as good as the others for me. From an animation perspective, this looks fantastic. It has this very sketchy, hand-drawn watercolor style to it that just looks beautiful. I haven't read the book that this is based on, but in looking up images of it, I can see that the art style of the book was translated pretty well into the short film, likely because of the author's involvement with the process. It was the longest of the animated shorts this year, but never really felt like it was too long. The story did get a bit repetitive, but for the most part, it was an engaging watch, and I really appreciated the focus on found family and the types of people represented by each of the characters in the story. What drags this one down for me, though, is how heavy-handed it is with its messages. These messages and the themes of this film are wonderful, highlighting kindness and friendship, but they're delivered in this continuous deluge of life lesson one-liners. I think this story is obviously more directed towards kids, so these messages are more than worthwhile, but it does end up feeling like a Paddington Light after school special. Coming in at number 3, My Year of Dicks. This is a US submission and was directed by Sarah Gunners-Dottir. Using a blend of different animation styles and techniques, this short focuses on a teenage girl who is determined to lose her virginity during the early 90s. This short probably has the most eye-catching title of the nominees this year, and is also the only one to come after a content warning in the shorts program. But considering it's about the teenage experience, I think this one isn't quite as risque as it maybe appears like it would be. I mean, we see more of the titular appendage in The Flying Sailor than we do here. With all that said, I was actually surprised by how much I enjoyed this one. It's broken up into 5 chapters, each recounting an experience and a boy that the main character was endeavoring to become close with. Usually when films are broken up into chapters like that, it kind of bothers me, but it sort of works here. It is a bit disjointed, but each chapter is approached from a different style. So this comes through in not only the animation, but also the way in which the story is actually presented. For example, one chapter takes on a gothic romance tone to it, another chapter is like a French New Wave film, while still another is designed like a horror movie. It's pretty fun, and definitely in line with the perspective of the main character, who provides voiceover and surprisingly on-point internal monologue throughout her experiences. Coming in at number 2, Ice Merchants. This is a Portuguese submission, and was directed by João Gonzalez. It uses a sketchy colored pencil animation style to tell the story of a father and son who skydive from their cliffside home daily in order to sell ice in the village below. I'll admit that when this short started, I didn't have particularly high hopes for it. The animation was very cool, with a scratchy, colored pencil, stretched proportion style that immediately reminded me of the artwork from Shel Silverstein books. But the premise and initial setup for the story was just really ridiculous. It had this magical realism aspect to it, with how absurd the scenario was, but didn't really lean into it story-wise, so it honestly was a little frustrating to me throughout much of the film. There's no dialogue, just some sound effects, but we don't really need dialogue to get a sense of our main characters, especially since we see the daily repetition of their lives. So it was okay, but I have to say, as the film was going, I was expecting it to end up being my 4th placed short. However, the final few minutes really turned this one around for me. I'm not going to give anything away or even hint at what happens, but it takes some minor things that were foreshadowed earlier and expands upon them in an incredibly emotional and visual way. There's one shot near the end where color, and sort of this transitional gradient of color, just tell us so much without actually having to say anything. So that means my number 1 Oscar animated short of 2023 is An Ostrich Told Me the World is Fake and I Think I Believe It. This is an Australian submission and was directed by Lachlan Pendragon. It's a stop-motion animated film that tells the story of a telemarketer who comes to realize that the world he lives in is actually a stop-motion animation set. I don't think many people are probably going to put this as their number 1, but I found this to be incredibly fun. It's not uncommon for us to have at least one stop-motion animated film nominated each year, but we've definitely never had one quite like this before. It takes its medium and actually incorporates it into the story in a delightfully entertaining way. As the short begins, it would be totally understandable if you thought they were mistakenly showing us behind-the-scenes footage of the making of the film rather than the actual film, because much of what we see is through monitors, and there's almost continuous fast-forwarded set manipulations going on in the background. You know, like people's hands actually moving the characters one frame at a time, just sped up really fast. That could probably be kind of distracting if you focus on the background, but it's the foreground and the things on the monitors that you should really be paying attention to, while keeping in mind all that other stuff happening in the background. Because that background stuff does come into play with the story of the short in a very meta way. This is one of the 2 comedic nominees of animated shorts this year, and while it probably doesn't have the emotional heft behind it to make a big splash, I just really loved the approach of this one. Every year, in addition to the 5 nominees, the animated shorts reel usually has 3 or so additional highly commended films that just missed the cut for being nominated. In the past, I've also talked about and ranked these highly commended films, but just like last year, I can't do that this year, because they didn't include any again. Kinda disappointing, since they tend to be better than some of the actual nominees. I'd like to hope that they make a comeback next year, but their absence 2 years in a row now has me a little skeptical of that. Alright, so that's my rankography of the 2023 Oscar nominees for animated short film. Have you had a chance to see these animated shorts? If so, what does your ranking look like? I'd love to see some reasoning for your order, so be sure to post it in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out my rankographies of the documentary and live-action shorts later this week, and my entire Oscar ranking shorts series. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insider information out of this rankography, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, and if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies. The way life should be.